to another episode of the Businesses Start Here podcast. Today, I am your host, Alicia Villiotti, and we have turned the tables on Dave, and we will be talking to him about where Villiotti and Associates came from. So stay tuned, and we'll talk to you soon.
Welcome to the Businesses Start Here podcast, hosted by David Villiotti and Villiotti Associates. We're here to talk with business owners and business experts to inspire and encourage entrepreneurs.
3, 2, 1.
So, we would like to know how you got to where you are today.
So it started. When did we? I didn't prepare for this at all. I'm not used to being on this side. So we started the firm in 2016, December 2016. We really did it because we needed a few extra dollars in our pocket. We had some extra people in our house that were teenagers, and teenagers aren't cheap.
Yeah.
So while I was working at Allegheny Health Network, I just put an ad on a website called Thumbtack and posted a post on Facebook to do some taxes. Ended up doing 25 tax returns that year. Made very little money compared to what I should have, and the amount of work that it took. And especially that first year, it took so long to really. I had a basic understanding of taxes, but it seemed like I got some of the most unique situations that I ever had. So the 25 tax returns probably took me as long to do as the 125 that we had the next year. Just because it was like every single situation needed research. I had somebody that I knew sent me every single receipt they had for the whole year. I had to go through them.
Yeah.
Victoria's Secrets receipts, like Whole Foods receipts, everything.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know any better, so I was like, yeah, send them to me, we'll figure it out. So
Don't do that now, right?
No, we don't do that at all now. So we really started as me doing something because I had kind of a skill for it, and developed that skill as we went, and it turned into a firm with a handful of people working here and a good number of clients, and really went from 25 tax returns that first year to 125 the next year, 250, 300 to, we're actually scaling back now because we realized that we're kind of paying a price for such low prices at the beginning of the firm. So we're really trying to reduce the number of clients we serve, and providing more value to those clients that remain. So we had a significant price increase this year, as well as a change in our model. So we really, on the tax side, we really completely changed how we're doing things this year.
Yeah.
On the business advisory / business accounting side, we started with a handful of clients here or there, and just grew that one by one. So there wasn't really a mechanism for, like, we used Thumbtack and got the first 2 clients, I believe. And then pretty much everybody else came from referrals from either clients or friends or referral partners that we use. It really grew the firm from there. It was difficult at the beginning. So the plan was, we started the firm in 2016, in December 2016, so all of 2017 we ran the firm through while I was working. 2018 we had somebody help us do some tax returns, and then the plan was in January of 2019 for me to quit my job and go full time. But some things happened at the job I was at that I just couldn't stay there anymore. So by in May of 2018, right after tax season, we decided that it was time for me to leave that job. So we had basically no income coming in. We had less than $1,000 a month coming in income, left a job that paid me over $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Very little savings because, as I said, we were doing this in the beginning to try to just make up the deficit that we had from taking on additional people in our household.
Yeah.
And really just random things kept coming up. I mean, we've talked many times on this broadcast about faith, but it really was God providing for us, because we felt like it was something He told us to do, and He's proved time and again that it is a God ordained business, and He's really helped us survive. And we're finally past that point where we don't know if we're going to make it from day to day or week to week, but it's been an interesting climb. As we added people, we made mistakes. I tell people all the time, the second person we hired, I calculated their pay during tax season, and really I calculated paying them once a month instead of twice a month. So we had to dig out of that hole for quite some time, but it was a good thing that I made that mistake, because we needed that person. And if I hadn't made it, we wouldn't have hired them when we did, and the business probably wouldn't have survived that period, because we were growing so fast I couldn't keep up with it. Again, it was the reason we couldn't afford them at paying them twice a month was because our prices were too low. Yeah. So that's something that it's a difficult trend when you start a business, especially like the accounting industry, where at the time we're seeing a mass exodus from accounting right now. But at that time, even just 4 or 5 years ago, we weren't seeing that. The baby boomers were still staying in their roles. COVID hadn't happened. It was not a great time to start a firm. So we were trying to buy work, essentially. So we weren't charging what we were worth, because we just needed something to keep our lights on and keep our mortgage paid. But now things have changed significantly in the industry, that people are running from accounting, especially in the tax side, because of the past few years with all the changes in legislation and the things that they're pushing through the tax preparers that shouldn't be. It's a pretty easy time to increase prices and really get the value that you should be getting from your clients.
Yeah. So we started with just a few tax returns. Well, you started at that point. It was just you in our basement.
That was at the dining room table.
Oh, that's right. We did start the dining room and then moved to the basement. So talk a little bit about the transition from full-time 6-figure salary to basically we had like less than $700 a month of rolling income at that point. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have to make a leap at some point if they start while working somewhere else. So, we talked about what it looked like, but like, how did you navigate?
So the first thing we did was go to Disney. Literally.
Don't do that.
Literally, the first business day after I quit my job, we had a trip to Disney planned.
Yeah,
so,
we did.
So that was the first thing we did. I recommend against that. We only had one client call. We didn't have any clients, so we had one client call during that time. So as far as timing and busyness, that wasn't the worst time to go. Just financially, it wasn't a great time.
Yeah.
It was an interesting transition, because really when I started the firm, like I said, after tax season, there wasn't a ton of work to do. So it was probably the first time in my life that I slept in past 7 o'clock on a regular basis, and that wasn't even intentional. I think there was part of me that was still not sure that was the right thing to do, and I didn't know what to do. But we had plenty of financial challenges, and I can't even remember all the things that came in, but I know in October of 2018, we were down to, I think we had $1,000 in the bank and like nothing more coming in. I don't think we'd added many clients at that point. And in the previous 2 years, I'd never really done extension work, or I guess it was September, but I hadn't really had many extended tax returns come my way, and we gave it an offering. We gave half of what we had. So really, it's not enough to do anything with anyway, so let's give it. Yeah. And within a few days, I think by the end of that next week, we gave $500 in that offering, and we had like $3,000 worth of work come in, which was enough to pay our bills and get us through for a few more months. And then right after that, things started rolling with adding clients. We were still pricing too low, but it was because we couldn't afford to lose any leads that we had. Yeah. So what I would do differently would be have a much bigger safety net. So you can go to market with the confidence that if I don't get this sale, it's not going to be I'm going to lose my house in a few months. It's,
Right.
if I don't get this sale, I just need to get the next one.
Right.
So I think that was the biggest challenge that we ran into, is we really had no safety net at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't planned that way. Like I said, we were hoping to get through. We were hoping to quit going into tax season when the money is flowing. In 200 tax returns versus 125 tax returns is a much different ballgame in terms of revenue, which at that point would have lasted us throughout the rest of the year, even if we didn't have an employee. So I think that was the biggest challenge that we run into, is balancing when to take a leap. So we thought that taking the leap, leaving my job, was like the
one
leap.
and done.
That's
Yeah.
it. Never have to do
We
it
did
again.
it.
But that's not the case.
No.
As an entrepreneur, we learned pretty quickly that there's a lot of tests that come in. There's a lot of times where the tension between what needs to be done operationally and what needs to be done financially are pulling at each other. They're going completely opposite ways. You sometimes have to build for the business you're expecting to have in 6 months, and go and work to make sure that you bring in the revenue that you projected to have to fill the position. So it can be a vicious cycle. If you miss one projection at times, it could unravel the whole thing, or you have to go back to where you started, or you have to find a new job or do something. I mean, there were times where I'd be out driving Uber or driving Amazon Flex, just things to help make sure that we had money coming in outside of the business, because maybe we brought somebody on that we couldn't afford. So we were earning money outside of the business to put back into the business, which is pretty common.
Yeah.
I think the difference for us was we decided we weren't going to use debt as a way to do it.
Right.
And we decided, and we didn't have the capital to start with. And I don't think that not using debt is the right answer for everybody, but it was the right answer for us. Debt can be an extremely powerful tool. It can also be an anchor.
Yeah.
I think most of the businesses you saw go out of business during COVID had debt, because there was enough programs to help people float their operational costs, but anything more than that, you weren't going to make it.
Right.
I mean, even the PPP loan, the first one, was 2.5 months of expenses.
Right.
Certain expenses. Debt was not included in that.
Right.
You could pay debt with it, but it wasn't included in that calculation. So if you had debt, you were spending money for something you'd already purchased and used, when the money you received was going towards current expenses. So, like I said, that it's called leverage for a reason. It either flings you up or shoots you down.
Right.
So it's one of the two extremes. It's the less risky way of getting financing, and we also decided we didn't want any other investors or partners. We did take one investor for a small amount, and they still have an investment with us, but we were very clear about what the investment was and what it wasn't. It wasn't a partnership. It wasn't they have no operational say in the business.
Right.
It's really just it's similar to debt, but it's hinged on the revenue.
Right.
And then when we decide to buy them out, then we just pay them back what they put in, but they've received payments throughout.
Right.
So I think that is really that was a main stress, but now that we're through that, we have no debt.
Right.
We have one person that we can pay a small amount once we decide to. But even the amount that we're paying on an annual basis is kind of negligible compared to what the revenue that we have is.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a more challenging way to start a business, but once you get through those new business issues and new business scaling pieces, it can be much more beneficial, because you haven't paid thousands of dollars in interest that are kind of an anchor to you and don't really accomplish anything for you.
Yeah. And I think navigating it that way allows us to present options to people that we're helping, because we truly understand both the take on loans or whatever side of things, but also the trying not to side of
Right.
things. So I think that adds a lot of value because we've done.
Yeah, and even though we decided not to, we did explore it at times just
Yep.
to see what was out there and if there's something that made sense. I think it wasn't a hard and fast rule that we weren't going to. It was just, this is how we want to do it. If
Yeah.
we absolutely need to, we will.
It was
But
never
every
a
time,
first option for us.
Yeah.
It was always a keep aware of options in case it was necessary, but explore everything else
Right.
first.
and for us, every time we looked at it, it's really just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And then we did run into financial struggles, so our credit score is still coming back from where it was. So the
Yeah.
debt that we can get is not the best debt. Like it's
Yeah.
weekly payments at times.
Yeah.
So things like that just, I mean, that to me is kind of predatory lending.
Yeah.
You'd be better off not taking anything than having weekly or daily
Right.
payments because it's, and there's no early payment. So some of these
Yeah.
companies that offer debt to people with awful credit, I believe believe they're doing the right thing, but when you look at it from a purely financial standpoint of the people receiving the money, they're set up for failure.
Yeah.
And
They need the debt to pay the debt.
exactly, it's really what it turns
Yeah.
into. I call it the death spiral. We've
Yeah.
had clients that we tried to help out of that they have so much debt they can't afford to to keep their operations running because they spend so much paying the debt that they accumulated trying to keep the business running.
Yeah.
It's a business model problem at the root. But then once you get into that, even fixing your business model is not going to fix it. You need cash to sustain what's going on.
Yeah. So that's the investment financial piece of the story. So let's talk for a minute about growth, because that's been another challenge that we've kind of learned how to navigate. We're still learning how to navigate all of that. Still going from a sole man, one man band operation to I think we've had 6 at our biggest. We've kind of five. We've kind of fluxed up and down with needs and moves and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But so talk about how, I guess, things that you've learned in navigating growth.
For us, I think the two biggest areas for growth that we learned are efficiency and just finding the right people. So, and the right people may not be the right people forever.
Right.
So we had a member on our team that was with us pretty early on, and as the firm grew, it became clear to both of us that it wasn't the right fit anymore, so we
Right.
decided to part ways with them.
Yeah, but she was vital.
She was extremely vital to getting us
Yeah.
from the beginning point,
Yeah.
where it was just me, to where we are now.
Right.
And it's interesting how she knew that she wasn't a fit anymore. I knew she wasn't a fit anymore, and we both tried to continue to make it work
Right.
for 6 months because we had such loyalty to each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to keep in mind, that you do need to be loyal to individuals, but I mean, really at the end of the day, you need to be loyal to the firm, because we were at 5 at that point, we're at 4 now. Being loyal to one person had the potential to ruin it for everybody.
Right. You have to find line to walk, because
Right.
we truly love our employees.
Right.
But ultimately, if the firm tanks, we're not helping them.
Exactly.
at all.
In addition, our employees are not helping our clients anymore.
Right.
They have to go find someone else,
Right.
and we honestly believe that we're the best fit for the clients that we
Yeah.
have. So, in my mind, our clients having to find someone else, in addition to the pain that goes with it of just trying to find somebody, they're not getting the same service that they would be from us. So I think that's one key lesson that we learned is when someone's not a fit, they're not a fit.
Yeah.
You need, and the longer you continue with someone that's not a fit, the longer it's going, or the more difficult it's going to be to make that change and then to recover from it.
Yeah.
But I think efficiency is the key thing. So I'm starting to say efficiency and pricing. So I think if we had priced appropriately from the beginning, the growth would have been much easier, especially in an accounting firm. It's a very high margin business. There shouldn't be financial struggle in an accounting firm. You see it a lot in new firms because they do the same things that we did. They price to try to win quotes and win business.
We have to make a name for yourself.
Right.
That's it.
But if you have the financial backing from the start, you can make a name for yourself one client at a time. We had to do it 3 or 4 at a time. And it caused issues. I mean, there was definitely customer service issues that we ran into. We started to get more complaints, and then we had the staff person, and the complaints went away. So, I mean, and it's not that we weren't doing the job, it's the communication suffered. But pricing kind of solves all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to what we did with the tax service, where we're serving less clients, we're providing higher value. That's what we're working on the accounting side as well.
Right.
So we're not necessarily looking to shed clients, but the new clients we bring on are at the true value of the service that we offer. And we're at the point now where we don't need to bring a client on unless it is a client that we can provide value to and sees that value. So we can be more selective with who we bring on. So the funny thing is, as you get more selective, generally the growth actually goes faster because you're finding the right fits. You have less turnover of clients, and those clients are more satisfied and refer you to other clients that are similar. So generally your referrals, people that refer you refer people similar to themselves. So that's why you have to be very selective about the clients that you're choosing. And I don't think we knew that up front. And then efficiency was the other thing I talked about, but just we didn't have any processes or systems in place at the beginning. It was just me flying by the seat of my pants. As a client emailed something, put it on the back burner until I can get to it. Sometimes forget about it because there's so much going on. But once we put some systems in place, it allowed us to be, as a team, more efficient with what we're doing. Because everybody knows what everybody's doing, we can pick each other up if needed. We have a shared location where all the tasks are, so we can all see who's working on what. And then your day is kind of dictated to you by what you've already decided previously. So you're not sitting down and saying, what do I work on now? You're sitting down and saying, oh yeah, this is the 3 things I have to work on in this order. So those are really the keys to getting through the growth, I think, is pricing right so that growth doesn't have to be volume. It could be dollars. And I think that's where in the past I was like, great, we did 250 tax returns, but that's not, but we made very little money on it. Or also the amount of time it took to do those 250 tax returns is just astronomical, and the stress that as you grow, your systems get stressed more and more. So if you can have a smaller client base at a higher dollar value, the stress on the system stays lower because it's anything that's smaller, some of those small inefficiencies aren't as exploited as when you get bigger. So having those processes nailed down and tested and tried while you're still small will make the growth easier as well. And that's something we didn't do well, for sure.
It's something that since we shifted a focus, I guess 6-8 months ago, to those processes and really developing structure, I think we've seen exponential change and for the better in what we're able to do day in and day out, and then that affects the quality of service that we're able to offer to people too. So I think something that is like an underlying theme to several things that you've said is like this fluidity in entrepreneurship. Like what worked for us 4 years ago is long gone at this point. And so I think that's an important thing to maybe talk about for a minute is like, you know, when we have people start a business, you know, we sit down and we have a plan with them for how to start the business. But honestly, that plan quickly goes out the window once you start going, and then the next plan. And so maybe talk about how to navigate the need for structure, but also fluidity in navigating entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I think I tend to navigate towards the fluidity side more than the structure side. I understand structure and the importance of it. I don't want to be tied down by it.
Right.
So I tend to err on the side of we'll figure it out, which is not normal for an accountant.
Right.
But I think that's part of what endears me to our clients, because that's generally how the population is.
Yeah.
So fluidity, I think that's what's helped us. I'm not really great at looking back and saying, here's what we did well, here's what we did wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty good at looking forward and saying, here's what's coming, here's what we need to do to adjust for it.
Right.
I think if I looked back a little bit more, it would be beneficial to us, because we could say, we wouldn't, I'm sure there's times, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's times we made the same mistake multiple times.
No,
Because I don't look back as often as I
Yeah.
should. It's, well, let's try this. And if I would be thinking, I'd be like, well, we tried that a year ago, and here's what happened.
Right.
Maybe we shouldn't try that. But I'm very comfortable with change and throwing something at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And I think that's a trait most entrepreneurs have.
Mm-hmm.
If you're completely rigid, entrepreneurship may not be for you.
Right.
Because change is the only constant. It's an overused saying, but it's 100% true.
Yeah.
I mean, what worked 3 months ago doesn't work
Right.
sometimes.
What
So,
worked yesterday
yeah.
doesn't work
So
sometimes.
it's a constant evaluation of
Yeah.
what you're currently doing versus what the needs are. And as you receive feedback from clients, positive, negative, neutral, you need to take that into account.
Yeah.
I tell a lot of my clients you can't manage to the exception, but you need to be aware of the exception, because at some point that exception will overrule.
Yeah.
And just because you're only hearing from one client that something's a problem, it's probably a problem with multiple clients.
Yeah.
Because clients tend to, not every client likes to be confrontational.
Right.
And as much as it is painful to have confrontational clients, it's incredibly helpful, because they tell you where you're missing it.
Right.
And if you're listening to those clients, you're going to be pivoting a good bit. Or at a minimum, it allows you to talk to other clients and say, hey, I got this feedback from Jim.
Yeah.
Is this something you're experiencing as well? And if you bring it up and ask a direct question, it's hard for them to say, no, we're not experiencing that, if they are. They'll be like, oh, I'm glad you asked that. You've really messed this up. Like, you'll get more honest feedback from the person who doesn't like confrontation if you ask a direct question sometimes than the person that does like confrontation, just because they kind of let it bottle up and they empty the whole bottle on you at once.
Right.
So change is inevitable, and you need to be looking for the change.
Yeah,
It's not even
seek it out.
it's not even, it needs to be proactive.
Yeah.
And there is a point, and I'm probably guilty of this, of changing too much, almost changing for the sake of change. So you need to have people around you to help you evaluate, is this actually something that needs change? Like, you're good at that with me. I'm very much, like I said, I'm very much forward looking, so I'm ready to move immediately. Like, there's been decisions I've made, you're like, why?
You're like,
Like, we went to change our tax software this year, and it wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
So we had to go back to them and postpone it to next year and just make different decisions. But I'd rather err making change, internal change. Client-facing change can be difficult.
Yeah.
But I'd rather err on internally making changes too often than not often enough. And even external, I guess, I'd rather err that way, but I'm a little more cautious with client-facing changes.
I think something that you started to touch on that was the next thing I was going to jump to was surrounding yourself with people. And, we talked about our team here a little bit in growth, but we're all very different. But we build this cohesive sort of joint thing where we all contribute in different ways. But even outside of those of us here at the firm, you've also built a network of support outside of that. So maybe talk about surrounding yourself with people.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that second part, because that was it's obvious to surround yourself with people as employees and teammates, but one issue at times there, we don't have that here because I have a close relationship with everybody here. You don't always get true and honest feedback from staff. The best advice you get generally comes from staff as you grow and from outside the organization. So I've been a member of multiple different groups where it's kind of a peer network. So business owners in the service industry, and we get together, we might pass some referrals back and forth, but really the point of it is just having a sounding board. So we'll work through a challenge one of us is having, and generally it affects all of us in some way, or as you talk about it, maybe something you've experienced, but it's been a while, you might remember, I need to go back and do X, Y, Z.
Right.
But having a group of people you can talk to honestly and openly that have been through what you're going through, or are going through what you're going through, even that haven't been through it yet but are on the same path as you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what you'll find is when you're giving advice, it's advice you should be taking
right.
as well. And it may be something you've done in the past, but you need to go back and revisit. So having a group of people around you that have similar experience is vital. Yeah. I don't know if I would have raised our prices as quickly as I did without some of the peer groups that we had. Right. And even then it wasn't fast enough, but it was better than, because of my desire to help people, and because we're in their finances and I can see what's going on, there are plenty of clients that I've needed to raise prices on for a while that we hadn't.
Yeah. And
we're starting to do that now. But my tendency is to take care of people and then figure out the pricing and the finance piece later.
Right.
Which the good thing is I'm still wired as an accountant. So I still look at the finances every day, and I can say, well, if we don't raise prices on A, B, and C, we're going to be out of business. We're not going to be able to afford it. So I still am lucky enough and blessed enough that I have that mindset. I have both sides of it, essentially. Right. And that's something that comes in handy because it gives me the compassion to deal with people, but also there are times where you need to put your foot down and say, listen, we can't continue to serve you at this price. We're losing money when we take care of you.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I think that's another thing that's been fluid through our journey is the people that we've surrounded ourselves and you've surrounded yourself with. Like, we are in a completely different place now than 4 or 5 years ago when we were first starting out. And so the people, some of them have grown with
right.
us and are still in that circle, but at times, it's been like, I need to move on to somebody else. And I think that's so important. I keep coming back to it, but I think it's something that is not necessarily talked about enough. The need
right.
for constant evaluation of where you're at and willingness to adapt and grow, or you won't grow.
Right.
If you are constantly only surrounded by the same people, the same structure, the same everything, that's where you're going to stay. You're putting a ceiling on yourself. So I think navigating people and surrounding yourself with the right people and the right voices speaking into what you're doing is really important.
Yeah, and like you said, it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
Everything changes.
Yeah.
It's just what it is as an entrepreneur. There are people that we were very close with at the beginning that weren't as interested in growth as we were, so
Right.
the relationship is still there, but it's not the same as it was at the beginning,
Yeah.
because they were pulling me up, and then there was a period where I was pulling them up, and there's not tension, but they weren't interested in the same things we were anymore.
Right.
And we both recognize it, and it's not that we
Yeah.
had a falling out or anything,
No,
it's
just
just the time priority changes.
Yeah.
You still spend time with them, but it's just not as often,
Yeah.
and it's more because you enjoy them as a person than transactional, which it was always relationship based, but
Right.
that relationship becomes more friendship than friendship / mentor, or friendship / I don't know what the word is.
Right.
Co-mentor.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, like, even people that I spend time mentoring, like, I get as much out of it as them. So
Right.
you feel when you're mentoring someone, it's equally beneficial usually.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about challenges of entrepreneurship because it is challenging on every level. But what's your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
There's probably two things. So personally, as far as how it affects my life, it's just the flexibility that you have.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm generally here from 8, I don't know, whatever time I get here until the time I leave. But not every day. I mean, there are times like if I don't have meetings and I'm not feeling well enough to mentally or physically to come to work, I might go golfing. I might go do something else. I might sleep longer. So when you work for somebody and you have a time you have to be there, you have to be there from the time you get there till the time you leave.
Yeah.
As a business owner, I mean, was it earlier this week or Friday last week? I think I took an hour and a half and went to the driving range because it was a rough day the day before, and it was starting to be a rough day that day. So I just went and cleared my head for a bit. Yeah, as an employee, if you do that, I personally don't care, but most employers would look at you funny if you said, "Hey, I need to go clear my head for a bit." I think that's personally the personal benefit to me is that's what I like the best. But then as far as overall, I just like helping people. So we're in a business where if we do our job right, we can change somebody's life for the better.
Yeah.
And it allows them to get that freedom that we have as business owners. So that's really what I like, is helping people open up their life so that their business and their life can coexist in a positive way instead of a negative way.
Yeah. Good. So that is good. So, one last thing. Anything you want to share about vision for the firm in the future?
Yeah, so the multi-year plan is developing I call it the firm within the firm. So we're developing niches that are industry focused. So the first one we're working on, because of my experience at AHN and some of the clients that we have, as well as bringing on a CFO specifically in that industry, is physicians. So we're really excited to have a meeting, kind of a final meeting before we go to market with Missy Nolfi, who we brought on as our CFO Physician Services.
Yeah.
Who's going to be that acting CFO specifically in the physician group industry, and it's going to allow us to really change how doctors, physician groups do their finances and give them a CFO that they probably couldn't afford otherwise. It's going to change the game for a lot of these practices.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So we're excited about that. And then the next niche is going to be construction, because we have a lot of clients there, we have a lot of experience there. And then we don't have the next one after that planned out, but we're building one, have one next up, and then once we finish building the physician side and we get that running, we'll be looking at the next niche to go in. I have an inkling on where it's going to be, but I don't want to talk about it quite yet.
Yeah, I think that's exciting because so their structure is kind of that those departments within the firm would have their own CFO, their own accountants, like very focused on that industry.
Right.
And I think that's exciting to be able to offer to people, like an accounting team that is in their niche. And that's something
And has that experience. We're only bringing on people that are already experienced in that role. We're not bringing on people and training them to it.
Right.
Which maybe as we grow, there's only so many people in those roles now, but for now, we're only bringing on experts currently, not people that we can train to be an expert.
And, our goal here is not just to do bookkeeping and payroll and that kind of stuff. It's to truly help people better structure, better navigate their businesses. And I think bringing in these professionals who have this experience and can truly focus on the industry is pretty cool to be able to offer people.
Yeah, we're excited about it. We're running out of time because the garbage truck's here, so the sound's going to go.
It's going to start beeping.
But yeah, we're very excited about offering industry-specific solutions to people, and that's really what we need to be doing.
Yeah. So look for more information coming on that. Anything else before the garbage truck starts banging around out there?
I just tell entrepreneurs, just go do it. If it's something you're thinking about, start in any way you need to.
Yeah.
Like we started part-time. That's a great way to do it, to test the water, see if it makes sense for you, and get out there and start trying.
Yeah. And even though we are an accounting firm, we can help on a lot of different levels. So if there's anything we can help with, reach out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was good.
Yeah, good. You stopped laughing long enough to do it.
I did. All right. Well, we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Businesses Start Here podcast. We hope you were inspired and encouraged by today's podcast. We would love to hear your feedback. Please send us an email at podcast@villiotti.com. That's podcast@villiotti.com. And be sure to share, like, and comment all of our content.